Now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Tired of lines at the boat launch? Sun damage or not using your boat because of the hassle? Call Meridian Marina and Yacht Club because we do all the work so you can enjoy your boating lifestyle. Restore your boat inside. Launch it with a wash with just 30 minutes notice and rinse it down before putting it back. Need new electronics? Service? Detailing? Bottom paint? No problem. Our experienced certified techs will make sure your boat is in tip-top shape and ready to head to the sandbar, fishing, or the Bahamas. Call us up at 772-221-8198 or visit us online at meridianmarina.com. So good afternoon, Stuart. Glad you're tuning in on your drive home. It's a beautiful day here in Southeast Florida once again. Just want to remind everybody that you can sign up for an email notice of who the special guest is every week for my show. If you just go to my website, you'll see an email link pop up or just go to the Contact Me. Also, on the second Saturday of each month, if you're into motorcycles, there's a great swap meet in Port Charlotte. Call 1-800-574-9835 for more details. Again, it's a great motorcycle swap meet the second Saturday of each month in Port Charlotte. And if you have an idea for the show, contact me. Let me know what it is, and you never know, we might have a great show on tap. So give me a contact again at my website. So on the line today, I have Dr. Sandra Risoldi. Dr. Risoldi, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and it's a very important topic about ending healthcare violence in the workplace.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. You have a huge event coming up, and we're going to talk a little bit more about why you founded this group. But the big event is really you're going to have a peaceful march at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. that's coming up in August 2nd. And I believe you're meeting at Freedom Square at 10 a.m. and expect it to last till about 3 p.m.
Yes, it's going to start. We're going to meet at Freedom Plaza, and then we're going to, wait there for a little bit, and then we're going to start walking down Pennsylvania Avenue to the front of the Capitol. There's 3 permits, that I had to pull. The reason I know you were mentioning to me, I wouldn't be here if there wasn't such a huge problem in nursing, healthcare in general. You wanted me to talk a little bit about how Nurses Against Violence was brought about.
Yes. Why did you why did you start the organization?
I lost my clinical site. I was working on my DMP. I was working on reporting because I wanted to have different legs of my project. My first one was going to be on reporting and what was going on. Why wasn't there anything getting done about, being in healthcare for 29 years, 27 on the floor, started out when I was 16 years old, wondering why nothing was getting done. So that was obviously going to be a curiosity of mine. So what I did was I started looking into an organization that I was, doing my clinicals with, and I found many holes in the reporting system. Well, when this got reported back to the director of nursing, they were like, whoa, wait a second. This is, too much. I just got accepted to be on the nurse abuse panel for the American Nurses Association. So, and the Joint Commission came out with a Sentinel event, and that is on a Sentinel event issue number 59, physical and verbal violence against healthcare care workers. And so their response to the Joint Commission, Sentinel event was to have this American Nurses Association panel for the end nurse abuse. So that was all relayed to the director of nursing, and I got dismissed about a week short of my clinical rotation. It's a good thing I had all my hours done.
Wow.
So in the Tampa area, it's very hard to find preceptors. Everybody wants, to get paid and stuff like that. So it's very hard to find a preceptor. So I made a funnel. I said, let me back up just for a second. I knew that this was going to be a touchy subject, but I didn't know exactly how much this was going to be rubbing people raw. And I was doing everything respectfully. I was not trying to cause any waves. I just wanted to help, because this is obviously a problem. And I started Nurses Against Violence, and the two people that went in with me, I'm the one that does it all. They're pretty much just good friends, and they were like, "Well, good luck. This is hard, and go for it." I started Nurses Against Violence as a nonprofit, 501c3, to help funnel some of the stories and try to communicate with nurses about their stories, because in order to have a clinical rotation, I needed to make sure that I could talk to nurses. I was able to find a clinical person, but they were a psychologist, not a nurse. So they took me under their wing and helped me with concepts that is going to eventually progress more so things for American Nurses Association. I mean, for Nurses Against Violence.
Okay.
So what has happened is this funnel went literally about 3 months ago, like when the senator was, talking about the nurses don't do anything. They got angry. So I said, well, all this anger, let's do something about it. So my Nurses Against Violence on Facebook went literally from about 400 or 500 to almost like 1750 now members, and we have a lot of active members and a lot of people looking at our page and pages.
Let me stop you for 1 second, Dr. Risoldi. You're trying to make this a nationwide effort, which is one of the reasons why that you're congregating in Washington, D.C. You're going to Capitol Hill,
Yes.
because this is a nationwide problem. And
Yes.
let me say first, your website is NAVUnite.org.
Yes, or nursesagainstviolence.com.
Either
So whichever one is easier to use.
And you can go to these websites, you can get more information about the march, about your organization, about a
Yes.
lot of what you have found, and also to help fund your organization, because of course it takes money to help get the word out on these things. And
Absolutely.
let me ask you real quick, you said you're working on your DNP. For those of us that are not in the medical field, what is the DNP?
Doctor of Nursing Practice. So this actually the day after the march is my graduation.
Oh, congratulations on that. It's a really big deal. Tell me, when you're talking about violence against nurses, are you talking about patient violence against nurses, or are you talking about within the organization itself, perhaps bosses
Both.
and other? Both.
Both. It is not only coming from the organization, it's coming from nurses, because they're not, getting, the staffing is terrible. Patients are coming in. There's not enough nursing education for nurses. Like it's kind of hard to explain. The nursing education is not meeting up with societal trends. Okay. So we have nurses that are not being taught about opioid epidemic. They're barely touching on CWA, alcohol abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And mental health is is a little section of the nursing curriculum. So therefore, it is not up there with maternity. It should be included wholeheartedly, 100% of the patient, which is medical and mental health. It is not. So first, coming out of the nursing school, nurses are not prepared, number one. Number two, it is the, we have patients, we're not able to work with these patients as population as effectively. So therefore, we're not preventing any problems. It's basically all de-escalation. So it's such a huge thing. It's so hard to just condense it into one little category, but it is lateral violence, nurses upon nurses. It is patients on nurses. It is family members on nurses. It is organizational over all of nursing.
And some of the things that the nurses are dealing with, when you talk about that, they're being spat on, punched, kicked, their hair's pulled, they have people stalking them, and there's verbal abuse. I mean, it's a really big deal, to the fact that I was listening to some of your podcast, and you have found that even suicide rates for nurses is on the increase because of post-traumatic syndrome, stress syndrome, trying to deal with this violence, and it's really a lot on nurses. So obviously one of the main reasons why you are starting this organization up, but what you deal with is tremendous.
Thank you. So, well, this is. I would not be here if this problem was not so bad, and I wish I didn't have to talk about this. But if it doesn't get talked about, there's no awareness, and nothing's going to get done. It's just going to be more of the same. And the problem is that we have healthcare. I love being a nurse, right? And I've been doing it starting out as being a nurse's aide. What I'm trying to say is that there is just not enough resources for not only mental health, but there's not enough education for nurses. And I know I'll get a lot of backlash from nurses by saying this, but we're just not prepared. I was not prepared for many years. And the protections that are for nurses, if nurses go to report these issues, right, they're victimized. I've counted at least 10 to 12 times victimized just for reporting a violent episode. And like they go to the emergency room to get drug tested immediately, which I understand liability issues, but then it keeps going. They're off the floor with no pay, at some point, or 60% of their pay. It's just, there's more protections for police. There's more protection for firefighters and military. There's nothing for nurses. They're basically a dime a dozen.
And that is a terrible shame. And folks, this is a topic when Dr. Risoldi had contacted me. It's so important because each of us either will know somebody who's in the hospital or we will be there ourselves. And we look to these nurses. They are our angel of mercy. They are there to take care of us. And we need to respect what they have to deal with on a daily basis. And I think that as a whole, it's important that legislation does get passed to help the nursing industry out. We had another nurse on here about a month ago. She talked about how nurses are overworked. They are given too many patients to take care of, and patient care is left to slack. They just do not have enough hours, and there's no regulations about how many hours they work. So as the public as a whole, we need to support you, and that's what this Peaceful March is about. I was also, when I was listening to your podcast, this kind of surprised me. You said in Nursing Trends in 2018, they reported 14,000 nurses, or 62%, have been physically or verbally abused. 62%.
And that's only out of 14,000 nurses that actually reported it.
And as you're saying, some of them are afraid to report it because of what may happen to them. Through their work. So this is a really huge problem. And then you also had stated in American Nurses Today that 1 in 5 have been physically assaulted by a patient. 42% of those reported it, and nearly half of those who reported it were not satisfied with the outcome because of the organization breakdown, which is what you were just referring to. When they do report, it doesn't always turn out well.
Nope, not at all.
What legislation's out there? What are you hoping specifically? Are you marching for? Is there specific bills that have already been introduced? Are you hoping to get some bills introduced?
There are some bills that have been introduced. I'm not really into the legislation part. We have some counterparts that are. My issue is the post-traumatic stress and the burnout that nurses are suffering from not having enough resources and not having, by the time legislation is justice was introduced, but by the time it is passed, there's going to be more nurses that are injured. So why don't we make more awareness now and get more upheaval in the system to, awareness to make sure that, this gets looked at and passed faster, right? Because you don't get anything done unless the public is aware, because a lot of people didn't even realize that nurses get injured. Oh, absolutely. I have nurse friends that get kicked, punched, spit on. It is not even, it's stalked. I've had people cry to me, and they're scared for their life. Okay.
And you have to put on a good face for that next patient in the room. And
you don't get a break in between. Like I have nurse friends and myself. I get emotional when somebody passes, but we have about the minimum of 5 patients, and the acuity. Like, say for instance, you have one patient, but they have multiple serious problems that are going on at one time. Those 5 patients turn into about 20, 25 patients, right? And you're hopping, you don't get at lunch. You're lucky if you have a granola bar and go into the bathroom and and eat it. Of course, you're not touching anything,
right.
Just inhaling something because you have to. You have to literally force yourself to go to the bathroom sometimes. The conditions, people say, oh, well, we're just a wonderful organization. I'm sure you are, but what's really happening is that nurses are overworked, and the 5 patients or 25 patients, And then so where is the nurse going to get any kind of reprieve? And mistakes will happen, right? Nobody's
Absolutely.
perfect.
Absolutely.
And the system is absolutely broken. So, but if the nurse makes like a mistake, like we've had the nurse from our friend from Vanderbilt, right? I'm not going to get into that, but mistakes happen
Right.
when you don't have the right acuity. And then you have patients that get upset because they're going through withdrawals and nurses are not prepared to take care of patients they don't even recognize the symptoms.
And the
Right?
opioid, absolutely, and this opioid epidemic is growing so largely in this nation, and I can understand why it's overwhelming for nurses that all of a sudden you have to deal with something that's, there's always been drug abuse, but it's becoming an epidemic, so it's so much greater, so much greater.
Right. Absolutely.
Dr. Rizzoldi, who keeps track of nursing injuries?
Usually, so JACO, when they released that Sentinel event, the alert, they said that there is a reporting system, a reporting mechanism that was going to be put in place, and that facilities were going to have to start reporting. It's pretty much mandatory, but they're not doing it. OSHA only does regulations, suggestions, but they're not really enforcing anything because they're understaffed or something. I don't know what's going on with that, but I tell nurses to do the whistleblower hotline, because that's the only resource that we really have, right?
Is that whistleblower hotline through OSHA?
Through the OSHA,
Okay,
yeah. That's
okay.
the only thing that we really have, because there's, sometimes, like, I work for a big organization in Baltimore. I'm not going to, mention
Right.
any names, but they were awesome. Like, they were on top of it. This is the only organization that I've ever even encountered. And I've worked all over the East Coast that is actually, put forth an effort to try to make sure that nurses had a healthy load and really paid attention to acuity. So when you have this lopsided patient load, and you have this over a sustained period of time, any psychologist would tell you that nurses are going to get burnt out. Any normal person would get burned out. Even superheroes would get burned out.
That's right.
There's no way that you can sustain that over a long period of time.
So again, you can go to Dr. Rizzoldi's website, NAVUnite.com, N as in Nancy, A as in Apple, V as in Victory, unite.org. And you said it's also nursesagainstviolence.com?
Yes, or they can go to Facebook, and it is also, we're all over there. We're hashtag Nurses Against Violence, or Nurses Against Violence, and everything is on there as well. And you're welcome to join our group. I would love to have you.
Absolutely. It's an important group, and I have joined one of the groups, and it's surprising to me, some of the stories that some of the nurses, they relate to you so well. They said, yes, absolutely, I had this abuse, or somebody hit me, and it's just the stories that are coming out. It surprises me, Dr. Rizzoldi, that in this day and age in this country, we don't have regulations for nurses. We have it for so many different industries, but yet when it comes down to our healthcare and our patient care, we're guessing. There are great organizations out there, great hospitals, and then there are others that are not, and we have no idea as the public walking into an emergency room or into a doctor's office what we're walking into. So
right. It's more of a punitive thing for nurses to even say anything. They get micromanaged, and then the point that they leave, and they're like, oh, well, I wonder why job satisfaction isn't so great, right? And then you also have, turnover. Well, if you keep turning over, you're still going to get burned out, because you're having to start another job. You have to go here, and then you're going to encounter the same problem. It's like it gets tiring after a while. There's a lot of nurses that are going to be leaving the bedside because of this.
You had mentioned that the organizational structures of many of these hospitals have lent itself to learned helplessness. Can you explain to me what that is?
Learned helplessness. So if you are constantly trying, right? And they're also putting this towards, you hear compassion fatigue, which is the same thing as burnout and post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a fancy word. It's a nice cushiony word. Learned helplessness is where you're continuing to try, right? You're what's right, and they're telling you, no, that's not right, and we're not even, you're basically left helpless. How do I want to explain this? So you're constantly trying to do the right thing, and I might be misspeaking myself. So you're trying to do the right thing, but yet no matter what you try to do, the organization is not helping you. So it's making you feel like nothing is getting done. And that is what's happening with reporting. That's what's happening amongst the nursing population, that no matter how hard they try, no matter how hard they try to make sure that they get things done, they accommodate, they're super customer service to the patients. And, no matter what they do, when something bad happens, when something, they get hurt or whatever, basically, if they report it, it's just basically teaching them, oh yeah, nothing's going to get done, and nothing ever gets done. So it's basically like you're just learning. It's like conditioning the nurses and the nursing staff that no matter what you say, it doesn't matter.
They've learned to accept it. Learn to accept it.
Yeah, learn to accept it. And they also were talking, there was somebody else that mentioned something about moral distress, which is like kind of the same thing where you have your hands cuffed, right? And you can't, no matter what you try to do to try to get out, and you see somebody getting tortured or getting hurt or whatever, and you want so badly to help them, but your hands are cuffed, and that is the organization, right?
Right. That's who should be there helping you, and instead that's not
right. And ultimately, it's going to affect their bottom line. I don't understand why they're not taking care of this. I understand money talks. I get it. But the patient care satisfaction scores are all that matters. And that's important too. I mean, patients are important,
right?
Right. And I love my patients, but when you have business mixing with patient satisfaction scores, what are you seeing? You're right. Losing nurses, you're losing money.
It sounds like some of the organizations are overlooking the nursing and just focused on that patient satisfaction, and
so they can get paid.
Right. That's what it's about, and that's what they would publicize. Dr. Rizzoldi, how many people and nurses are you expecting at this march in D.C.? And again, this is a wonderful march. It's going to be August 2nd, meet at Freedom Square. You're going to march the Capitol, and you're going to be meeting about 10 a.m. that morning.
I have on the permits, I have between 25 and 30, because we're going to start making these an annual event. I'm hoping there's going to be a whole lot more. I would imagine there should be, but the violence is so high with organizational violence that I don't know how many are going to show. But even if I have to stand there with my nurse cap on and all in white and have to hold up a poster, I am going to be there. Like, I am going to make some noise.
Well, somebody needs to get the ball rolling, and you certainly are, Dr. Rizzoldi. I mean, this is a very big topic in so many different ways, and it's about the violence. It's about having regulations on how many critical care patients you're taking care of, how many hours a day you work. All these things add up, and I couldn't imagine the fatigue of that job if you don't have a regulation of how long you're working, that adds to the stress and maybe outburst that would happen. So, yes, absolutely very important. So, in closing here, we got about a minute left. What do you want to say to your fellow nurses? Come on out, obviously, to Washington, D.C. Let's be heard.
August 2nd, 10 a.m., we're going to meet at Freedom Plaza, and we're going to do this. We're going to show out, and we are going to have this peaceful march. Make sure that you tell everybody. If you're not able to come, we're going to have lots of video on the page. Please come. Please support us. Let's make some noise. We have to make some noise. Our time is right now.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Rizzoldi. And you do not have to be a nurse to be at this march. Show up, Washington, D.C., August 2nd, 10 a.m., Freedom Square. Good luck to you. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.